that are drawn to scale, those reflect the sites directly below them, and each drawing is related to the photograph below it, which is related to the site below it. The numbers are further identified as you move down the page, so you can sort of correlate building to photograph to drawing in context. On the far right-hand side is a street section, which I'll explain later, but that cuts through our subject number 27 property as it crosses the street. Obviously, the middle of the page is the general site plan. I'm showing here the existing context. This was drawn from, the scale drawing was garnered from locus maps, HGC sets of drawings, and personal observations. Information for this drawing was used from a transit in terms of establishing some finished floor levels. The whole series, just tried to put as much as I could part into this and just trying to establish as accurately as possible a great deal of information so that we can all have at our disposal as much as is available and as easily accessible. The far right-hand side, you'll see sort of a miniature site plan. That is the subject area, existing conditions, and I'll talk about that, but just not to be confused as anything else, those are going to be the existing.
Whereas this shows the proposed of the subject properties.
This is proposed.
It's the existing of the neighborhood, but the proposed plans,
This has no.
as they are now on number 31, 29, 27. Those belong to Jeff. And those footprints show the proposed, but the rest of the neighborhood is the existing.
Right.
Just so you're clear on the site plan.
So what I would like to do is, if we could all just sort of like cruise through this together, and starting on the right-hand bottom side, we'll start with number 1. So I'd like to just describe the building, so we'll just work our way around. And again, this is at the chair's request of like providing full-blown information of the nature of this properties and site.
I'd like to get a clarification. Just there's one thing you didn't mention.
Oh,
at
yeah,
the
sorry.
bottom of the sheet, these appear to be homes
I'm
that
sorry,
are
yes.
at the top. Can you just explain?
So the top drawn elevations that are drawn to scale, that's all of the existing. That's nothing but existing buildings on the east side of the street. Okay, that's the subject side of the street. On the bottom, we have a series of drawn elevations. That is that same side of the street. It includes a draft proposal that would be our subject houses.
So it's a combination of existing and proposed.
Yeah. The goal, of course, is to allow you to see the massing context and its appropriateness as what is currently there as existing, and then maybe as what we may end up from a proposed standpoint at the end of the day.
Before you go on, I have a SHAB advisory board memorandum. Do you want me to read it now or wait until you give your proposal and then?
You can read it now.
Okay, just to make it easier for you. It is, the information history is assessment grade cooperage next door. Buildings in the downtown area, with few exceptions, were built on property lines. This building is in that same category with respect to this history. Imagine knowing the Mason Christian house 51 inches from Walnut Lane, or any other house on Lily Street or other streets for that matter. It would have a potentially cascading effect for future applications in the OHD. Please read the back previous hashtag comments and Lucy's comment on the back. Originally approved 8/5/15, but withdrawn on appeal. Please note building is being raised 21 inches. Sarah Aldous says 1795 is its original location. No reason to move given developer intent. Moving will destroy historic significance for reasons, and this isn't one of them. Francis, cartooning long photo record of a semblance of buildings, takes issue with reason being developed and removed. And Lucy is streetscape is historic, and shifting buildings will create historic anomalies.
Just to orient you to the general dynamic of the site, so as North Liberty basically cuts across a hillside. And this hill, the topography basically drops about 10 feet from west to east. The west side of the street, which I'm going to start talking about first, is the areas in front of the house is elevated, and the stone walls basically create a plateau for a number of the houses. Number one, you can see that the overall kind of massing. It's just it's a big corner lot, and the big corner is essentially a one-story property built in 1922. It's considered contributing. As we move to number 28, it was built in 1938. The BSIF calls it out as contributing. Its finished floor level is 67 inches above the street. And the number 30, built in 1938, is contributing. Its finished floor level is about 71 inches above the street. Number 32, built in 1840, contributing, finished floor level 60 inches above the street. I just call this the levels above the street out as important because, as you're moving down the street, they're not just one story, 1.5 story houses that are 22 or 24 feet high. They're significantly higher. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to make sure we all understand that. Number 36, built in 1938 on that same side of the street, also considered contributing, has a finished floor level at 14.5 inches high. 42.5 inches high. As we move to the other side of the street, starting on the upper left-hand side, the number 37 is a 30-foot brick home, and that is built in 1938. BSIF calls it out as contributing. Number 33 is today a 5-bay with an additive addition on it, and this was a new home that was built in 1996. Its finished floor elevation is plus 44 inches above the street. It sits on a raised grade elevation of about 12 plus inches. Its HTC approved ridge height is 29 feet. This is an important house to focus on in the sense that it's next to our subject properties, and there was an existing house that was there, but moved in 1996. The existing house was considered by BSIF as non-contributing, built in around 1938, and the HCC found it appropriate that a 5-bay, 2-story home be allowed in the street. The next building over is one of our subject properties, number 31. Built in 1938. Also, like its neighbor I just spoke about, it's been called out as non-contributing. Its finished floor level is 0 above the street. I just want to talk about the street for a second. The street, if you remember, was built initially as a dirt path, no doubt, back in the late 1700s, 1800s, early 1800s. And you should keep in mind that the owner, when he built it, didn't build it into the dirt. He built it up above the dirt. And what's happened over time is, as we all know happens, roads grow, and then when modern world kicked in, and you do the underlayments and you do your finished road surfacing, the roads come up pretty significantly. So coming back to the number 31, it's just an interesting note, which I'll talk about later. the road heights are more related actually to these following houses, but it also relates here to this little structure. This is an atypical structure. This is not something that is would be HTC approvable. There's a number of aspects to it that don't comply with the guidelines. It's atypical rake rafters gable forward, and it's very and it's low pitched roof to start. I'm going to talk about its replacement, but I should talk about that in a minute.
No, because it has to do with the streetscape.
I'll talk about the house's replacement in just a moment. Then following to number 29, which was built in 1798. This is clearly an individually significant structure, a great contributor to the fabric of North Liberty Street. Number 29, which has in the past been called a barn, it's called a warehouse on town records. This has been called out by BSIF as non-contributing. Its finished floor level is 3 feet below the street level. So, you know,
This is the barn, right?
Yes.
yeah, the barn, yeah. And you can see how from a drawing standpoint, what its impact is. I'm going to skip over number 27 just for 1 second to, we kind of found out really late in the game that there was a structure to the south of number 27, actually, that was known as number 1519 North Liberty, that existed and was moved within the last 10 years. And it was moved further up North Liberty, or to the other side of the parking lot, basically, of North Liberty, that parking lot on the east side as we now know it. And just as another point of reference, the spar shed, which is also on North Liberty, and another about 4 or 5 houses up, was also moved on its own property. That was a theater at one point, and that was allowed to be moved towards the front of North Liberty. Now, if I come back to number 27, number 27 was built in 1798 or so 1802. I'm getting these dates from the BSIF sheets. This building is considered individually significant, and the finished floor level is flush with the street. Again, the number 31, number 29, also finished floor level flush with the street. Our number 29, 3 feet below the city street. Number 27, flush with the street. You know, all of these are non-healthy structure conditions and a result of modernity and the rise and the road being built higher. So now if we come back towards, to give you greater context, I'm going to come back to number 27 as an ending point. But if we come back towards number 31, which is our, you know, again, this is a request to show sort of where we're moving, how we're sort of moving as our group to sort of like provide the best answers here as we move towards understanding really what's good for number 27. Number 31, we currently have, if you look at the bottom row of elevations that I drew, you can see that number 31 is 4 buildings over from the left. You know, we modeled this directly, you know, in a very similar fashion to number 36, which is just a house away to its north, across the street. Number 36 is the photograph we're showing. We've shown you. You can see the similarities. It's not a copycat, but it's a respectful, reflecting similarity. You know, North Liberty, as a general rule, has a pretty wide variety of what goes from very simple, very small one-story homes, maybe more so towards the Westchester end, to the bungalow, to just the boxy 3 bays, to the brick. You know, there's actually a pretty wide spectrum of buildings here. So number 31, our approach was to number 1, be respectful of its environment. So how are we respectful of its environment? We take our cue from nearby buildings. And therefore, you can see we've taken it, the scale of it, the size of it, the way, we move the roof, instead of gable forward, we're a roof away, because that's a less impactful impact on the street. It's important to note, number 31, whether this is a renovation, we're thinking that this may end up being a renovation of what's there if necessary. And we're actually would be peeling back number 31, so this footprint is actually smaller than the existing footprint. I would call out number 33 to its neighbor, who did, ask again for a similar relief in terms of an old building, to be allowed to build a new building. Number 33 was allowed to build over its footprint. It either built entirely over it either has a bigger footprint than it originally had, or it's really maxed it out. It's got a basement, first, second, third floor, as far as I can see. Number 31 might have taken the position of number 37 and number 33 and said, well, let's be a two-story house and try and really kind of like maximize things. But no, we're thinking that that's not as satisfactory an answer, because of the context. The neighborhood's context is smaller. The other thing is, the most important building here is number 29, in our opinion. And we want to be respectful of number 29 and number 27. But number 31 is actually pushed back from the edge of the street. That serves to allow for appropriate parking. Right now, the parking for that existing structure is parallel parking to the street. It's awkward and not good. The other thing that I should just talk about here for a minute is the value of how the street moves spatially. Okay, so spatially there are pockets that we think are of high value. And for number 29, for example, we feel like the idea of giving a greater view corridor for the pedestrian or the car to the entirety of the number 29's elevation would be a great benefit and historic value. And this is why number 31 shifts. Another reason why when number 31 shifts back, it sort of presents this benefit back to the street for those viewing number 29. So that's another way in which we feel number 31 serves the streetscape. Number 27, similarly, is in its high historic value. Number 29 takes its cue by responding in a similar way. It reduces its number of car parking spaces. It allows for this visual pocket off the street to look both to number 27 and number 29. And these pockets I'm talking about, especially even number 29, because there's certain value in number 29 being way back on the property from people who just randomly pass by and don't really pay attention to anything. There's this sort of almost unconscious perception of pocket, and what we're saying to bring to the table here is we're keeping that, and number 29 provides the pocket. It provides decent parking, and it takes an appearance. If you look down below, you can see perhaps where it may go. We'll perhaps keep the gambrel look, because that's the look that's been there since the 70s. Since 75, and since apparently it's very important, we could keep that look, but we could modify it to look like a converted barn to home.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
The idea in general is to retain the flow of the street in the architecture. What's forward on the street stays forward on the street. The buildings that we would like to work on and change are back from the street as they are now, so we're not changing that experience of the streetscape. It still undulates with the architecture forward, back, forward, back. The forward buildings are the historic buildings that we want to accentuate. And then the newer structures that we would like to renovate, rebuild, add new, will sit back as they are now, but we think in a more beautiful way.
One other thing that we should note is that what we're intending to do here is again, bring back the historic feeling of the neighborhood through the use of fencing, through the use, bringing back the sidewalk. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of the photograph page, row, it says 1880. You found a photograph in 1880 of number 27. And there was a picket fence that ran all the way along there. And on the edge of the picket fence, we picked up that there was also a small structure. So I mean, what we're trying to do here is bring back the authentic, an authentic original feeling. So the picket fence with that shed, the parking, number 27, we believe should be picked up. The foundation that's currently there is a pier foundation, and it's a cobbled together. It's been it's a mixed bag of block of brick and PT. It's not like on Main Street. It's of no value, and that's why we feel like the idea of severing it, lifting it up, and putting it back down makes sense and is often allowed. Because it adds to the longevity of the building, and this is the longevity of the building. Ultimately, is what we're looking for here. As we move towards completing these series of projects. So number 27, it's lifted up a bit and it's shifted over. We are asking that it be shifted over about 6 feet to the south.
One of the things about this little house, in defense of picking it up and moving it 6 feet, there is a hedge that will stay. There will always be a hedge, but being allowed to pick it up and move it 6 feet, which is not a significant distance for a memory or a vision, it's significant to keep the building stable for the next 100 years, new foundation, and lifting it away from the elements. But also in an aesthetic sense, it brings it a little bit away from the hedge and the other buildings that are next door to give it even more visibility and significance when you're walking by. It gives it a little space to breathe. You'll be able to see that elevation a little better, that side elevation, if it's not jammed up with the hedge and the fence that's there. So in defense of that building being significant, I think being able to see it a little better can't be a bad thing.
So I think just as we're basically done. I would just ask you to look at, I suppose, at the bottom series of elevation, and sort of ask yourself, is this moving does this look to be similar a patterns, an architectural vernacular and pattern typical to North Liberty and contributing? We believe it is, and we believe we have peeled back and reduced things, and we'll contribute, and we'll continue to as we continue to take these other structures up to a higher level. Our goal will be to make them as efficient and small as possible, because frankly that's why Jeff hired us, as we typically do small and middle-sized homes. That's some of the pleasure we get out of it, working from a standpoint of in the old historic district in particular, and that's our goal, to bring it to so that North Liberty would fit nicely into North Liberty. That's it.
Yes, Diane, thank you, Libby. Before we open it up to questions and Sarah/public, I just want to bring up a couple of things of relative importance. Next month is will be the 6-year anniversary of when I began the engagement of this, and I'm 6 years. I'm not looking for any sorries or any of that stuff. I'm the one that's sorry for one thing, and the board that's here now, there's only 2 members from when we started, 6 years ago, that are still here. I think you 2 know who you are. Everyone else is new. But anyhow, what I presented was too much, okay? And unfortunately, by the time I realized it was too much, there was such a groundswell of opposition, in terms of this overall plan, that I could never get you know, the street, you know, I could never get fixed, you know, so that I could come back right. And I have paperwork like you couldn't believe to present, but I want to keep this as short and as simple as possible. I do want to know, just follow up on Diane, your reading into the minutes 15, 20 minutes ago regarding the HSAB meeting last Monday, that of the 6 members that were sitting there, that report came from only one member, because 4 of the 6 were conflicted out, and Lucy Brooke was the only one, was the only sitting member. Angus was not there, and the other 4 were conflicted out. Lucy Dillon's comments were only made as a person from public, not from HSAB. So I just want that to be really clear. Period. It's in all the minutes, Diane. Okay.
Yeah, I just wondered why. She made the comment and she's on the board.
No. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because in that groundswell of opposition, she, on a couple of occasions back in 2014, wrote some very detrimental editorials to the newspaper without knowing the whole picture. And I asked for her to be conflicted out on this right here. No different than, you know, people on the other side that are asking other people, you know, to be, you know, to take a seat, okay? So I just want the board that's sitting here right now, and who are the 5 sitting members on this application right now?
1, 2,
3, 4, 5.
You,
So-
John.
Okay, you're 5, okay, thank you. I wanted to be clear on that, but I just wanted all 5 members to be really sure that that they understand that was only one person, that wasn't there was no quorum, okay? And then the second thing, and I'm trying not to be confrontational, as I just said, I apologize for this overbearing plan, and I'm very proud of what Luke has put forward right here. But against maybe my counsel's advice here, but I'll be very delicate when I say this. The house, and I missed this for years, guys. Okay, when we enacted HDC 2, which I'm not going to do anything more than just show this, we came forward with a 120-page PowerPoint presentation of all of litany of houses moved, altered, added on to, renovated, so on in the historic district, and you know, on the island. But the one that I just, for some reason, we all missed and didn't hone in on was the house that was right next door, sitting on what's now the land bank property, number 19 North Liberty Street, which used to be the old Blair House.
Right.
Okay, the land bank put out an RFP. Had to go to Boston. It took more years than I've been here, you know, with this matter. But anyways, they were eventually, with your blessing, 2 of the members here actually signed off on that moved it from its old location at 19, and this was a pre-1900s home also, okay? Moved it from 19 North Liberty to 15 North Liberty, okay? And I just want I know Luke touched on that, but I just want, you know, the 5 board members to really understand that was a 100-foot plus move, okay? And I know as this, I mean, the writing's on the wall, I know what's coming. We're only asking for a 6-foot move to the south, a slight move up to get it above the street and slightly back off the street. So I don't, you know, nothing negative, nothing confrontational. I just wanted the 5 members to make sure they clearly understood that.
I think they do. I think they do. From the prior application that you wanted to move it, and
Yeah, well, but Diane, as I'm
the
saying,
building stays the same, whatever application it's in. So but we do have studied it pretty well.
yeah, but all I'm saying is that I never honed in on the relevance of the move literally right next door
Perhaps
10
we-
years ago.
Perhaps we didn't either.
Nobody did, you know, and So I'm just making sure that that's not missed today. That's
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, Sarah,
Okay, where to start? Well, I have a whole bunch of handouts for you. While I'm doing that, I just want to say the difference with the Blair House that we were just talking about is that it had already been moved prior to its move down the street. It originally was on the west side of the street. So there's a big difference because that's the whole issue here. Once a house is moved, once a historic house is moved and taken from its historic spot, it loses a lot of its historic significance. That's why you should never allow a historic house to move in the first place. Because once it moves once, it's easy to move it again. And then it has no relationship to the land, to the other buildings that surround it, to its place in history, to its place on the streetscape. It's just another building and you can start moving it around like the Blair House was moved. The things that I have in my packet to give you, I want to give you a copy of the decision that Judge Fahey issued on the case on 29 North Liberty Street regarding the barn, because she says a lot of, I think, interesting things about the neighborhood. In particular, she says that the three homes are also irreplaceable and a very important part of the historic fabric in the historic town of Nantucket. She says, I accept that the Seth Ray house with at least one other structure, the barn on that property, and adjacent to the historic Seth Ray Cooper shop are, as a group, equally important with the three brick structures. So that's Judge Fahey's decision.
Can you clarify for me the Seth Ray, that's Valentine?
The Seth Ray house is the 29,
The four-story.
is the
Yes,
Gambrel.
and we don't plan on touching that one, except
And the
to,
Cooper shop is 27, and she includes that.
okay, that's barn,
Okay, no, the Cooper shop is 27.
Right here.
sorry,
It's
yes,
the one that we're talking
yes,
about.
that's, mhm.
Okay. As a group, equally important with the three bricks. Let's see.
That was the judge who said that?
That was the judge.
Okay, I'll have a follow-up question on that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna I don't know how many copies of this package you want, and I'll tell you quickly what's in here. Then our complaint on the last go-round on the move on 27 North Liberty Street, I want to include because it has a lot of relevant information in it. In particular, back at that time, the Historic Advisory Board unanimously recommended that the HDC deny the portion of the application that sought to move the structure, noting that, and I think all of these things apply today, the applicant presented no compelling reason for moving the structure. Moving the structure would severely compromise the integrity and continuity of the property's historic setting in violations of standards established by the Secretary of Interior. Moving the structure would damage the special character of the site by disrupting the historic and careful relationship of the structure, Seth Ray's former Cooper shop, to the adjacent Seth Ray house. Moving the structure would violate guidelines established by the HDC in its own publication, Building with Nantucket in Mind, which emphasizes the larger environmental context of buildings and preserving, quote, as unchanged as possible, end quote, old structures built before the middle of the 19th century, quote, in their original settings and conditions, end quote. That comes right out of Building with Nantucket in Mind. Moving the structure would have a cumulative negative impact, destroy the historic relationship between 27 and 29 North Liberty Street, and work to defeat the historic significance of this particular site. In recommending against the portion of the application that sought to elevate the sill of the structure to a height of 21.5 inches above grade, the Historic Structures Advisory Board noted that there was no evidence that lifting the structure would be necessary to preserve it, that lifting it as high as 21 inches could facilitate the removal of historic elements, and that lifting it a height of 8 inches above grade would be sufficient and typical for creating a moisture and termite barrier. And recommending against the portion of the application that sought approval for additions to the structure, the HSAB noted that additions as proposed would overwhelm the existing historic structure, especially the mass of the main part of the structure and its historic 18th century core, would undercut how the structure conveys its history and setting in relation to the surroundings, including the adjacent public space owned by the Nantucket Land Bank on the southeast side of the locus, and would detract from its historic significance, especially in the evolution of the structure in the 19th century, from a place of work and industry as a cooper shop to a place of residence. The HSAB identified revisions to the proposed modifications that would be appropriate.
Can I get a clarification through you,
Sure.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sir, I just want to make sure I understand the information.
Yeah.
You are referring, you've mentioned the HSAB several times in your
And
comments.
I'm referring to the HSAB comments back in 2015.
Okay,
When
so-
there was a quorum of a full sitting board, and
Okay.
not just,
And at that point, they were also looking at a 21.5-inch increase. Okay,
and
just-
they were looking at a 21.5 increase up and the same 6-foot move over.
Okay, I just wanted clarification.
And I
so
think the
understood.
the same proposed additions to the structure.
Thank you.
Okay, then I have, a copy of the Nantucket, historic landmark designation indicating the Nantucket's coming under threat. A letter from 2015 from Michael May, who was then the director of NPT, concerned about the proposed move, saying that it will destroy the unique streetscape of this neighborhood. The house, originally a shop and one of the few remaining secondary buildings of its kind, has existed in its original location for over 200 years. Its placement along the bend in the road overlooking the lily pond is well documented in historic photos and maps dating back to the 1830s. The house was the shop of Seth Ray, who lived at 29 North Liberty Street. The house and shop are identified as one lot in early deeds in the 1834 map of the town. And he goes on with some other history, saying that protection of the shop and its relationship to the Seth Ray house is critical. Their unusual setting and their relationship to one another is of utmost importance to us, and we believe to the general welfare of the Nantucket community. Then I have just my own notes back at the time, speaking to a prior chair of the HDC concerning the reasons why there are only 4 justifications historically for granting a move of a house, none of which apply in this particular case. One is that the building has been previously moved since its original construction. In fact, the example that I give is the Blair House that was moved back from the north side of North Liberty Street parking lot to the south. That building began life on the other side of the street and had been moved once already. In addition, the new location was historically appropriate for the building. The second reason, leaving the building in its original location would pose a threat to the continued existence and integrity of the structure. An example of that would be a structure threatened by erosion. There's no threat to this structure in its current location. 3, leaving the building in its original location would pose a threat to persons difficult to ameliorate by other means. An example of this would be little houses built directly on a street where the front door actually opens into the street. Or 4, exceptionally, where leaving the building in its original location would deprive the public of benefits associated with continued visibility due to anticipated as-of-right development. And that doesn't apply in this case either. So there is no justification for moving this structure. Perhaps there's a justification for picking it up out of the dirt and putting it on a better foundation, but not the 21.5 inches that's been suggested. Something smaller than that. And we've never objected to that, but we do object to the move because there's no justification. The only reason for the move of the structure is to facilitate other development. And that's not why you're supposed to move historic structures. You're not supposed to move historic structures to facilitate development. Imagine if you started moving the 3 bricks or other historic structures so that other buildings could be built there. It'd be horrifying. I have a packet of historic photographs that I want to give you. The building and structure inventory for this property, which identifies it as an individually significant structure. I mean, this isn't just any structure. This is a building that was built in the 1700s. It's individually significant. I have a letter from January 13, 2016, from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, writing to confirm that 27 North Liberty Street is a contributing element in the Nantucket Historic District and is therefore listed in the National Register of Historic Places. It's also therefore part of the Nantucket National Historic Landmark designation from 1966. And then the history of the house from the NHA Library. At the time, it was numbered 15 North Liberty Street, but through renumbering has now become 27. And finally, just a copy of the deed of the property from Elephant Paddock to Seth Ray in 1798. In addition to having these documents put in the record, I'd like you to incorporate in its entirety the 2015-2016 record regarding this property and its proposed move, because I think there's a lot of important information and documentation in that. And I have copies of this whole package for everyone. I don't know how many you want, but you can have as many.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I be heard?
certainly, certainly are.
For the record, Attorney Arthur Reed, representing the applicant. Just very briefly, with regard to the legal status of this case, bear in mind that the decision that Sarah quoted from was the decision of the Superior Court judge. That decision was appealed by the applicant to the appeals court. And the appeals court entered its decision remanding, because of various procedural issues, the matter to the HDC. And strictly speaking, this is a new application. It could come back to you simply for rehearing on remand of the original application, but in order to present new information and for the board, a new board, to be able to get the full case, we obviously have submitted this as a new application. But the point is that that decision is not a final decision in the case, and although it's interesting to hear what the judge had to say, somehow a hard time equating these structures to the three bricks, but be that as it may, that is not the final decision of the court on the matter. Rather, it's back in your hands on remand. And I would call to your attention that the move of the house, the 6 feet that we're talking about, was specifically acted upon favorably in one of the cases that went up to the court on appeal. So that issue is still open, and it's a question of whether that earlier decision by an HDC board at that time should stand. Again, that can be argued, but it is before you that has been previously approved by the HDC.
Arthur, can I ask you a question? The one going forward that the HTC approved the move to 6 feet, what year was that?
August of 2015.
That was approved by the court in?
No. Approved by this board, by the HDC, in August of
Do that.
2015.
All right, I'd like to get a copy of that. I think we should have that copy as how many out of the board approved.
It was 3-2.
If I may, it was submitted with the original application.
What?
It was submitted the prior.
Oh, it's in there?
It's in, yeah. It
Thank
was
you.
submitted with the original application.
Thank you, sorry, Arthur, go
No,
on.
that's all I have at this time, Madam Chair.
I'd like to clarify something that Mr. Reed said. This current case that's before you today is a new application on the move of 27 North Liberty Street. The case that Judge Stahey decided only dealt with 29 North Liberty, but it talks a lot about the neighborhood. And that's the case that has been remanded that isn't back before you. The 2015 approval of the garage move was appealed by us to the Superior Court. I've given you a copy of our complaint. The then owner of the property decided that he didn't want to pursue the house move and didn't want to pursue the case, and he abandoned the approval. He turned it back in, so that approval, in addition to lapsing as a result of time, was turned back in and is no longer, he abandoned it, it's no longer valid. And that case was therefore dismissed and never heard. So there was never a decision by the court on the 27 North Liberty Street.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, just two follow-ups for that, please?
Yeah.
And then, thank you. I totally agree with, I believe with what Sarah just said, you know, regarding the 27 case and the abandonment. But again, I can't let anything go that's just misinterpreted here. Sarah's early on conversation about HSAB back in 2015 or so on, and all of those people's writings, follow-ups, you know, the 3 bricks, all that stuff. I wanted to be real clear that at that time, I was looking at a 25-foot house move. I had shrunk the proposal of the house move from 35 to 25. So when HSAB was looking at this application, you know, 5 years ago that Sarah's referring to, it was based on 25 feet, not the 6 feet that was eventually approved by this board. So
8 feet.
no, 6 feet. 6 feet.
6 feet? Oh.
6 feet. Yes. Yes.
Does it involve the maple tree too?
What's that? No, it's going the other way. So it
No,
does
but I
not.
mean, you're,
Oh, no, it would have involved the maple trees, correct. But anyways, Diane, so I just wanted to be crystal clear that all of that early on stuff was pretty much based upon my, I'm gonna call it a little overzealous plan. And, you know, we're back down to this. And the one final thing is, as we talk about house moves and so on, and I know we're coming back here, I'll be back here, whatever it takes, is that I'll bring back information regarding house moves and so on, but the oldest house of them all, the Gambrell at 29 North Liberty, indeed was moved off of its foundation back in the early part of the century right here, and was eventually moved back. So that house moved also. So, and I'm not looking to move it, but I just wanted the board to understand that. So, anyways, thank you very much.
you're welcome. So are we, heard everybody that's interested in speaking? And
There are neighbors who want to speak.
others?
Yeah.
Of course there are.
Well, how are we going to?
I know, and this is a preliminary, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
even a real application.
I think I need a better understanding of what we're accepting as records for a new application. I'm very confused at this point,
Are there neighbors here now?
Yeah.
which I'll follow up on.
Well, I think if you give them a short length of time, so we can hear them, some of them come from off island, and it's hard for them to get back. If we could stick with that, Sarah, we would
Yes.
give a short length of time, stuff won't be repeated, what's already been said, and if any of our commissioners have a question they want to ask them, this would be the time to do it, want to ask the neighbors.
Can we ask questions
Yeah.
ever?
Yeah, right
No,
after,
you're not allowed.
No.
right after this, we will, but we might as well listen to what they've got now.
I do have a question though that I think is pertinent, and Steve touched on it. I also am confused as to what we're actually doing with this particular application at this meeting. Are we looking to re-up a previous approval?
No,
Or are we
Valerie, can I?
Yeah,
I know
because
where-
I
know where
think
you-
before anybody goes any
you know
further,
what,
it's important to know that.
If it wasn't articulated properly, we're here with a formal application for 27 North Liberty Street to, with its modifications slash addition that the neighbors and public have several times stated they don't have any issue with any of the design matters. It's just a house move. We're here to, from a formal basis, to move the house 6 feet to the south, up 21 inches and 18 inches off the street, okay? That's the only formal thing that's in front of you. When I came here in September to, after the Boston court case allowed us to come back, I came here, presented exactly what I just discussed, and at that time, we only had a 4-member board. Ray recused himself, and we only had a 4-member board, and I wasn't comfortable moving forward with a 4-member board, so I withdrew the application and came back again.
All right,
But
this I understand, is a new application.
this is a
for
brand
the
new
move
application for the
of
move.
27 North Liberty Street. 5 feet or 6 feet,
6 feet.
21 inches and 18
Correct.
back. That's
Cor-
all. There's
that's right.
nothing to do with
But-
any other house in the
but-
vicinity.
But Steve and Val, your question and your confusion is that at that September meeting, 2019, Diane in the chair said that it would be very helpful if we could come back with a streetscape plan showing what your intentions are, which I've never been able to do, or which I should say not able to do. I never chose to do, but now you asked, and Luke and Kerry were hired to do exactly what you asked for. This is an addition to the formal application for 27. We're not looking for any approvals. We don't have plans finalized 100% on the other buildings. We're just here, back with 27 North Liberty Street.
Right.
This
That was
just
my
shows you-
understanding to begin with,
Yes.
is that it was this new application for 27 North Liberty, and that's all.
That's
Your
correct.
presentation of the streetscape and everything is fine, great.
It's what you asked for.
Right.
I think it supports the move of the house in that it shows the streetscape, the sensitivity of the entire properties relative to this old house at number 27, the
Yeah,
cookie
well,
shop.
that's not the question that was in their mind, I think. What was, the question was, is it only 27 we're talking
No,
about today?
that was
or
not the
whole
question.
thing?
No.
The question was, there were significant changes to this house from 2015. In my mind, unless you've upped it, it's
No.
not,
It's
okay.
the same
Same.
exact
We
house.
haven't
That was
touched it.
approved, that was approved.
But,
5 years ago.
okay. It's not still valid, it's 2020.
No, that's correct. That's why we're back here with a new
So,
application.
I'm not approving one way or the other this.
Right, this
Okay,
is what,
that's
Right.
where my
So-
confusion
that's
was.
the application,
Okay.
Just the
the
application
entire
to move.
thing.
If you approve this application, you will be approving those changes.
Okay,
Yes, it's
okay.
the enti-
Can I,
the en-
Madam Chair, we
Yes,
gotta
right.
get this under control.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, my question had nothing to do with any of that. My question was quite simply, as a new application, what are we obligated to review from past applications, if anything? That's number one. Number two, I'm gonna follow up on Val's comments. I think as I'm understanding these drawings, thank you, I appreciate the support. As I understand these drawings, there is existing, there's a previous submission, and then there's a change. So what I'm saying broadly is that I think for this application to be reviewed on its merits as a new application, we should see two things on this sheet. For each elevation, we should see an existing and a proposed, and the proposed should be bubbled to indicate what's changed. That, I think, will help address Val's question and concern, is that, and I think it's important, this isn't a house, a 1980 house that's having addition put on it, that can be done through staff. I think that the merits of this particular application warrant having a clean set of drawings to start from, because if there are revisions requested in a design process review, those will need to be reflected sequentially at a smaller scale in the drawing sheets. So I think we need to start from a clean slate with respect to what's included in the drawings, what is existing and what is proposed in this application. Not anything previously submitted, whether it was the 15th or the 6 years ago or anything like that.
If
Does
I
that
may-
help with your, just one moment, please.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so,
So it's a clean slate.
and then with respect to, you know, it's unfortunate that the HTC does not have access to its own counsel because, and I think, issues and, applications of these merits, we do have access to counsel, but it's not, you know, instantaneous. I am, personally, I have some uncertainty about what should or shouldn't be included. I have some distinct feelings about what should or shouldn't be included. But I will get into some of the questions I need to ask on that later when I have an opportunity to actually speak and ask questions. I just wanted, at this point, we're just cleaning up our understanding of what's before us and kind of giving you an idea of where we stand with our uncertainties about what we're reviewing.
Right.
That's what that whole little thing was.
So now, do we have a neighbor that wants to speak right now?
Just, can I take just a second to clarify the point on Steve's point, which I think are very good points. There is no question what is before you is a new application. Only matters that are submitted to you should be considered. We agree completely, and I think it's extremely appropriate that the materials that Steve asked for be submitted, and we will be doing that. In terms of the other materials that have come before you, both in the application and from the Neighbors Council, we have no objection to your considering any of the materials that she submitted, and obviously we hope that you will take into consideration ours. Believe me, you're going to hear all those things sooner or later anyway, and whether you get them directly from the people talking again, or whether you get them from the previous materials, you're going to get them, no problem. But what is before you is what is presented in writing and in presentations and on plans at the meetings on this. And I think that to go on a step beyond the present application, I think it will be entirely appropriate for you to consider what will be happening on the other buildings that are within this project all at once. And I discussed this with Brian earlier and with Luke and Carrie. We will be able to proceed in the very near future to submit applications on those, and I can certainly understand if you want to handle those all at the same time, because there's no question that the streetscape issue needs to be dealt with as an integrated whole.
Right, but today we're
Today,
addressing the moving
today's the
of
first meeting.
27 only, not
It's the first
29.
meeting on the moving of 27 only, and we're very much interested in any input we can get from anybody in the
Okay.
course of that.
So just to be clear, when we, Madam Chair, because there's there's easily misperceptions just being stated. For the sake of expediting discussion, moving is not the only thing in front of us. And I'm not saying for or against, I'm just talking about information here.
Yeah.
When we say moving, what you are actually saying is moving 6 feet, an addition, adding a chimney, demo a chimney, and doing some other work. Though it's not just moving, and I just want to be clear because I think I register Val's concern when she hears moving. That's not the only aspect of this application. Thank you.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes,
I have one question. This is the application that was filed, and the question is, who signed it?
Victoria?
I did.
That's your signature?
Yes. From September 4th.
Thank you.
Okay, Johnny?
Um,
Do you want to hear from the neighbors?
Yeah, let's do that quickly so we get
Yeah, cause I really would like to take all of the information and review it before I make
Make
any.
any decision.
Hi, I'm Mary Bergman. I'm the Executive Director of the Nantucket Preservation Trust, so I'm not a neighbor. But I would like to echo Michael's comments from 2015, even though we are discussing a different move, a different distance, a move of historic structures, still a move, and Nantucket Preservation Trust is still in opposition to the move of the structure of 27 North Liberty Street. Repositioning a building alters the historic streetscape, threatens historic district's integrity. And as the National Park Service says, when a historic building is removed, it loses its integrity of setting, its sense of place and time, and important aspects of the historic character of building and its environment. And I know you'll be on this thing again, so I'll be brief, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Sarah?
No.
Good afternoon, my name is Tom Montgomery. I was going to speak, as a matter of fact, I was going to do this much speaking, but I'm not now because I'm a little irritated. This agenda only says Jeffrey Kashula, 27 North Liberty Street, addition / move on lot. Not all this. That's fine. I have no problem with it. But it would be nice if the neighbors who have spent a lot of time putting this together knew about this.
This was a request by the chairperson.
I understand that, and that's
so
why it's fine.
That's a response to.
But it would have been nice if we knew about it too, because we're the other side of it,
Right.
okay? I'm gonna hold off our comments. As a matter of fact, the only reason my wife and I are the only two people here, the Bermans are other neighbors. 6 months ago, they planned to go to Italy now, and that's where they are. And so they prepared statements which I was going to read. Mrs. Hoyt, who lives directly, literally, across the street from 27 West Liberty Street, fell down and broke her leg in multiple places and is housebound by doctor's orders until further notice. And has also sent some information for me to read. But given the situation as we have it here, I think it's probably best for all of us that you guys do what you gotta do, and then we'll come back and do what we got.
To when? And your name is?
Tom Montgomery, 33
Yeah.
North Liberty Street. Thank you.
Okay,
Tom,
so,
I think you should put their letters in the file.
I'd rather do that when I give them.
Okay.
so, Abby, you said you had questions. Let's start with you and get this ball rolling.
well, so, it's a lot of material. I just, when when this passed in 2019, I think we said it was 8 feet off the property line, but you're changing it to 6, is that correct?
It was always 6,
Oh,
well, it
is
was 35 to
It
20.
it says 8 on here, on this particular drawing, that it's moving 8 feet off the property line to
Those
the.
are the original drawings, so.
Right,
They
which is
haven't
why
been
it's
updated.
confusing.
Okay,
Well,
so that's,
in
all right.
In writing, it
And-
was here.
And the height that you want to, that it's coming up is 19 and a half inches, or how many inches is it coming off the, is it rising?
21.
21. And back from the street is
18.
18, okay. Are we saying what we feel about this now in general?
In
Just a
general,
in
not
general.
specific.
In general, I am okay with the moving back, the moving up, and the moving off the property line.
Okay,
I would concur with that. There's a lot of stuff in this neighborhood that has been altered. I've personally worked on 2 of these houses, significantly altered. And I don't see that moving something 6 feet is going to detrimentally change the streetscape on this. Now, with regard to the alterations to it is another concern, but they're gonna give us more clear information on that.
Steve. Johnny?
Yes, I'm still confused about what I'm reading here. This application says that the owner of record is Jeffrey Kashula. And down in the bottom, it says, I hereby authorize the agent named above to act on my behalf to get the application approved. And I asked who signed it, and they said the lady sitting over there signed it. It must be signed by the owner, not by the architect.
She works for him.
She works.
And I'm
sorry?
am I listed as the agent?
Yes, she works.
I can't hear you.
She's listed as an agent for,
Yeah, she works
Mr.
for me.
Right.
She's Jeffrey's employee.
Is there an agent consent form?
What?
There is. 4 months ago or something?
I just want,
Yeah.
I dropped the i's, crossed the t's.
Okay,
And I'm finding a problem with this, where it was not signed by the owner.
okay.
That's number one, so I always look for that first.
Want me to sign it right now, John?
Yeah, would you
Can Jeff
mind?
sign it now?
Because it would
Just-
solve a lot of
Just
problems.
to clarify,
He's gonna sign it.
That's true, I'm listening.
Oh, you're,
Okay, let's not fight between the two.
I don't think we're fighting, so we could start, but we're not.
Don't hit it.
No, I just would like to get moving along here.
Yeah.
Me
This
too.
is,
So-
well, then let's please do
I do
that.
just want to clarify that I was given permission to be agent and signed as agent.
I asked a question.
John, did you?
Please sign that.
Did you hear what Lori?
Have you got a, John,
what-
have you got a statement to make?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a statement about the moving of the house?
Look, the project, I have quite a few, it's gonna take time to study this.
Yes,
You
just,
can't
do
just-
you have any feeling now that Jeff can, and Luke can take back?
Yeah, take it back? Yes, one small, no, I didn't, I was gonna mention that. It explains a lot, it's a good presentation. That's what I'll say for now, until we move on and get some more information.
Okay,
Thank you.
Steve,
Okay, I'd like to clarify, John, that if we have an application from an owner who signed a consent form, their agent can sign the form. That's part of the way that this works.
Right, but it's not in the application, so you have to see it,
Okay, so.
that's all.
And that's gonna take me to the next point. There's been some comments with respect to 2015 submission that there were some, Victoria commented that there was some additional information submitted. I didn't see that in my view pack. I would like a digital record of this whole file before we proceed further. I think that should be compiled through our staff so that for us to review, so we have it all in the same place and we all have the same thing. And what I mean by the same thing is we have a copy of this drawing. We should have a copy of the actual drawings that will be submitted for the new application. We should have a copy of the submission by Ms. Alger. We should have a copy of the letters from the neighbors. I also want to speak about these things, and this is directed at no one in particular. And frankly, my frustration this evening is about time and about this particular matter I'm going to bring up is not even directed at this application. It's a cumulative effect that it's had sitting here for a number of years now. And we get literally reams of paper submitted at the meeting, and we don't have time to review it in order to make an informed decision. We can't inform ourselves if we're asked to be making decisions from one week to the next without ample time to reviewing documentation. So while it doesn't behoove the applicant to turn in information at the table unless it's a minor modification, it doesn't behoove any of the opponents or supporters likewise. So,
try and get it
again,
early.
we want it all in a digital format, please. I would like specifically to have added to the drawings, topographical site plan. I do not consider that it needs to be engineered. It needs to be accurate relative to the town GIS. I do see it here, at least in part, it appears with respect to the proposed streetscape. I'm not looking for a topographical site plan for every home. I would like it for the site plan for the application as submitted for 27. So that will give us, I think, important information. I would also like a building section of the addition in the existing house. It does not need to be detailed. I'm not looking for the applicant to be investing a lot of money into this with respect to this particular drawing, but I would like to see the representation a cross-sectional representation of the structure from, basically, as opposed to going east-west and south, north-south, because this is a kitty corner, I'm gonna say front to back and side to side. So that would be helpful to have in our packet, in addition to the topography. I covered the information needs to be digital, please. That includes the comments from the 2015. It includes the neighbors and their agents. I will look into some questions I have about, I would like to say that I too welcome all the information we can get on this. I'm not trying to preclude anyone from submitting or speaking. I just want to I'm gonna get some clarification on what information we should be weighing on this particular application as a new application versus the legal mandates that may be required if it were a remand and we were reopening an old application. And there is, I think, a distinction. I'm not suggesting that the information that is provided by anyone isn't relevant either way, but I think there's a legal distinction as to what is required and the weight that it has. Is that correct? Okay, so and I just want to be clear in why I'm asking for this. I would like some clarification on what the finish in the application, the written application. I would like some clarification on what the foundation finish will be. It's listed as concrete, whether that'll be a parge or something else.
Oh, can I add to that,
Yep.
that question? I wanted to know about the sills, if you were replacing the sills if you were to lift this. Are you replacing the sills? I'm assuming.
Yes.
That's why it's sunk. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I do appreciate the site plan, the streetscape presentation. I think it's helpful information. Not unlike community developments that we see or even a series of homes where there is more than one structure being developed. It is important for us to see the context because after all, we are here to help determine and guide in the vernacular for a particular area. So this is very helpful in that regard. I don't think that it's appropriate for us to be reviewing elevations of those in detail. However, I do believe it's important for us if your intention is to, and I realize this may have been a late addition, if your intention is to put a garage or carriage house that was on 27 North Liberty back on the property, I believe that it is appropriate for you to submit that application as a separate application to be reviewed alongside this. It provides us the benefit of having the information. It provides the neighbors the benefit of having the context, and so on and so forth. I appreciate the window schedule detail. That was very helpful. Oh, I just wanted to clarify with respect to the, please pay particular attention to your shading with demo and changes when you make this a new application so that there aren't holdovers, because any confusion at the table is just going to delay things.
Yeah, we just basically start fresh.
Okay. And I believe that those are any of the substantive comments I have at this point. With respect, I'm sorry, it's not. I would like some clarification and additional information. Diane had asked for some additional information, a copy of the application. Is this what you mentioned, Tori, was that the original approval to move it, the HTC approval and that application were included in your original application?
Yes,
Okay.
it's August 11th.
So we want that in digital, so we have it for you. And I would also like to have, because this is context, I would like to have information presented, and this is on the applicant really. 19 was mentioned that it was moved from the west before it was moved to the land bank land. I'd like to get a copy of the digital version submitted through staff of that application, both the written application and any elevations or drawings and site plans and the minutes of that meeting, as well as I just want to reflect back on Diane's request that 2015, I would like to have a copy of the minutes of the prior approval for the 6-foot move, so that we, as well as the applicant, you and the neighbors have a complete package to be looking at if you so wish, which I do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. I haven't unfortunately changed my opinion that you take there are so many of our historic houses are getting bombarded with pleas and whatever to move, change, and that they're not going far. I think reading the books, which I have spent some time doing, historic, federally stated historic advice, says that once you move a building that has stood there since 17 whatever, it's never been moved. You destroy its position as a historic building. I think raising it for the 8, 10, 21 inches is not moving the building here, there, or the next place. It's keeping it in its thing, it's lifting it to protect it, which we are commissioned to do, is to protect the historic. But moving it 6 feet to any side does not, from what I understand, has not improved or destroyed its integrity as it stands now. I have been in that building. It's not been that long. I walked with no problem at all. And you and I went through the barn and all the rest of it. I know it pretty well. I don't see, one of the things they say about Westchester Street and about old buildings is that the older the building, the closer it was to the street. And I think this is true at 27. I remember a piece of stone between the front door and the street, which wasn't big and sunk down. It was down below the surface, but it was all right. And I don't mind the hedge. That's the way the houses were. If you remember, and I looked in and I had it written down and I lost it at the moment, as this was called Little Egypt, this particular small section from Westchester, Franklin Street, those 4 little houses, not down the street all the way to town, not up the street all the way to the cliff, just this particular area. It's the oldest street that becomes Westchester. I would not disagree with adding stuff to the building. My feeling is, as a believer in the HDC and the preservation of historic buildings, that when we've got a chance to preserve one and not change it, it's worth doing, and doing what you have to do in the back. The stuff I see, I didn't disapprove of, I didn't make a statement. My particular statement is, I feel for one of the few buildings that still remain in their one spot, hasn't been moved anywhere, that it's important to protect. That's all I want to say, and I thank you for your time, your submission. And I just want to ask you a question. Did you say that you don't need elevations?
No, we do need the elevations existing
Yeah.
and what's currently
Okay,
proposed.
then I just,
Yeah. And a cross section.
right. So I thank you. Thank you for your listening, and thank you for coming, Sarah. Okay?
I'm gonna submit Mrs. Montgomery's, remarks for the record, and you can get it digitally, so you can read them before the next hearing.
Right, and Mr.
Thank you.
Montgomery will be back.
Yes.
We'll try and, between the bad mail and stuff, we'll get it to him in time. Okay? Thank you for your time and trouble.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. What's today's date? The 7th, the 9th? See,
Nantucket Dreamland.
3 years.
I'm sticking with
What's the motion on that? Motion to hold for more information and
And
plans.
drawing report.
All those in favor of
Yeah,
that?
Val did.
Val did.
Okay.
Thank you.
What?
Okay, the next one is the dreamland.
I'm just giving you a hard time because you need it.
Hello.
My name's Joe Hale, I work at the Dreamland.
Hold on, because we don't have plans yet.
John, the war's in your head, that's the only thing.
Huh?
The war is in your head.
Okay, who's sitting on this one?
That worked out. I was thinking.
I heard you vote on it.
Which I wasn't.
Are you on this one?
Oh, Steve.
Okay.
No.
You. I'm sticking with it, she said. How are you? That's okay. But we did speak on the phone.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and if you need, I mean, I'm happy to follow up.
Okay, so our applicant is here. Everybody who's talking that is not relevant to this conversation at the table, please go out in the hall.
We'll let you know when we need you.
All right, I'll start with the Ashad Dreamland Theater. And the questions on the south elevation is, what is sandstone paving? Is it appropriate here? Raised planting beds are going to tower over street. Circular shapes are too modern for downtown area. There was a stipulation that area had to be paved with brick during original construction. Will this negate that? Too much. And I had a full board. Angus, Lucy, Session,
Did you go to this?
Brooke, Megan, and so there you are, nothing on the back.
Sure. My name is Joe Hale, and I work at the Dreamland, and I wanted to come tonight to withdraw this plan for your consideration. We've spent a year really developing it, and the whole impetus was actually this statue of Fred Rogers that we wanted to put somewhere at the Dreamland that Seward Johnson is doing for us. And we got the funding collected for the sculpture itself, and we thought it might be a way to make the back of the Dreamland a little bit more user-friendly. As you all know now, it's Chapter 91, our Chapter 91 agreement stipulates that we've got to have 8 benches back there, we've got to have 3 trash cans. And I don't know that we've really been using it to its highest and best use, quite frankly. A lot of people go back there, smoke, and they eat back there, and there's always a lot of trash. We thought this might be a way to kind of turn that around. But we've talked to a lot of people since then, and in the time that I even submitted this to you all, the back is flooded 4 times. And so we want to be realistic about what we're thinking about. So I just wanted to withdraw this plan for your consideration and let you know that I think we are going to be coming back to you and asking for your permission to put Mr. Rogers, that sculpture, in front of the Dreamland. And so instead of on Easy Street, put Mr. Rogers in front of the Dreamland, replacing one of the flower boxes that are out there below the vitrines that kind of show the posters of what's playing. The sidewalk, as you all know, is very wide there, and it would probably, the sculpture itself would take up about as much space as that existing flower box does. It's only that we've only flooded in front of the Dreamland once in the last 4 years, where the water have actually come on Water Street and into the front door. So we have less chance of flooding, and then the way this sculpture is actually being constructed, it can be put on a dolly and moved inside. So in the winter, if we want to, we could put it inside the Dreamland, kind of under the stairwell where people pass by to go to the movies. We think we want it to become one of those iconic places that if you're on Nantucket for a day or a week, or you live here forever, at some point you've just got to have your picture taken on that bench setting next to Mr. Rogers. And Seward Johnson's, who's actually very ill right now, but he's finishing this sculpture for us. So again, I just wanted to let you know that we're not going to go forward with this plan for the back. What we would like to do though, and it'll be included when I come back to you, is we want to re-landscape what's existing there because it's really scraggly looking, to be honest with you, the trees and the Rosa rugosa. And we think we could do more seasonal planting there. But we may also ask for a couple of modular portable flower boxes to be put back there too. Because right now we have people illegally parking back there, and it is supposed to be a park available to the public. And so we thought we could put some of those flower boxes, move them if we needed to, but again, it would just add to the, I guess, you know, the park feeling of it. We've also talked to the people at the Conservation Foundation that have started, I guess, tearing down that house across the street on Easy Street right now to create their park. And we'll get some advice from them in terms of kind of salt-resistant plantings that might be more appropriate for behind the dreamland.
Try
So-
some broom. I said, try some broom,
Well,
better
Yeah.
than Rosa rugosa.
there's a lot of grasses.
What?
I have just a request. If you're gonna resubmit, would you just bring in photos showing the whole, from the rear, the back of the building, and it shows it'll show what was there once you do something.
Sure, be glad to.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Then you are going to withdraw the,
Motion to hold for, it's being revision?
It's being withdrawn.
it's
Oh,
been
withdrawn.
withdrawn.
Okay.
The other thing I questioned.
Okay,
was
next.
The metal, the statue is made out of bronze,
Correct.
so what difference does it make whether it gets rained on or flooded or not? It's not gonna go away anywhere.
Well, this one actually has some color involved in it, because, you know, Mr. Rogers' cardigan sweater is actually red, and he's got his
I was
sneakers
his
on.
mailman, I know.
And so it does have color on it, and so it's gonna have to be, every 3 to 4 years, it's gonna have to be repainted. So sitting there in water, just didn't seem like the best solution for it.
All right.
Well, we appreciate you coming all the way over.
Thank you, and thanks
Thank
for
you.
having to sit through all of that.
I'll be back.
Mr. Gale, can I just have your signature on this as I withdraw it?
The next one is 9 McLean Ave.
Hey, welcome.
Bell and I just drove by, so I'm okay with this.
Just to be clear though, the stuff that's bubbled is just showing what you're doing to the house. We're not voting to approve it.
That's what we are doing with the house.
The application is just for the pool,
One,
so
one application is for the house, one is for the pool.
Oh, what do we have
So
first?
I
We
always
only
want
have
exactly for the
one.
house.
It's the house
Oh.
first.
Yeah.
Oh, roof.
Roof, I got window.
Oh, I'm
So-
sorry. I thought it was this one.
Yeah, we are from previously approved, but previously we applied for the 15-foot addition. Now we are from there, trying to change the roof speed just a little bit to make it work with the whole second story. And then change the fenestration, and we are also adding basement walkout
29 and 8.
with the railing and then backends on the back of the house, which is not fully visible in the back.
Is this the same, is this?
Oh, the same addition, only we added a
So-
window in the front. There was a
nine?
discussion, yes.
Yeah, it's mine.
So there was a discussion last time about
So-
too many shingles on the
wait,
in the front.
stop for half a
Yeah.
second. What, did this get approved?
It did. This didn't.
This
It,
got approved.
It was conditioned.
Oh,
It was
So,
conditioned with
do
three
we
windows.
have any of the
Previously-
previous approval?
Previously approved, it should
it's
be
on-
there,
it's
but I
on the
have it
sheet.
here also printed out.
previously approved is on the left, and a.
The one with three
proposed is on
windows.
the
The
right.
one with three
They
windows.
extended the gable, they built
They
it in the
extended
same profile, they just extended it about a third longer,
Didn't we just get this?
and they changed
Uh,
it.
Yeah,
This was approved a few weeks
Yeah,
back.
like
Couple
a
weeks back.
week ago, I remember that, yeah.
So,
And
Ray was on that.
there was a discussion about the window sizes, and then so we added a window.
Yes,
So
the
how-
windows were very small.
How long is it
Yeah.
building now?
So they were.
we are not changing size.
And
Okay,
we
you're
added
going
a
up.
new window. We added
Just changing the
Okay.
roof.
instead of 3 now there's 4.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that that covers the front a little
Yeah,
better.
remember this?
I do remember
Yeah.
this, yeah, it's the blue trim house,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And then so actually we decided to change the pool trim to natural if that's possible. That's part of the application.
And then you put this.
And then we added
Yeah.
the basement one window.
In front of the house.
Yeah, and then the little, that's just some kind of
So,
guardrail.
So you're putting on a whole new roof of this?
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot higher.
Yeah, that's
And a
like
cellar
3
entrance
feet
on the
higher.
front of the
Yeah.
house.
The main door stays where it is, and yeah, basement is in the front,
But we don't usually
Yeah.
have cellar
Because-
entrances on the front.
because there's no space on the side of it.
There'd be in the back if you weren't putting a pool.
There would be,
Well,
Or
on
do you
the
want a
side.
basement or a pool,
there is a
one or the
deck,
other?
there is a deck, I mean, we can maybe move it there if really needed.
Okay, so just to be fair, when we were asked to view this by Linda last week, it was simply for the pool.
Yeah,
Oh,
When we went today, that was all we focused on. I didn't pay attention to the house because we didn't have any of this. I'd like to view again because
it was all
the,
submitted, so I don't, what do you mean you didn't have it?
No, it wasn't, we didn't get them
It was not placed.
What does anybody think of viewing?
Yeah, we could review view the
Can we all
architecture.
get through a few comments and then
Yeah.
decide that?
Yeah,
I think it's fine, other than the height is questionable. And I don't wanna see the basement walkout on the front of the building, we can avoid that. But I also agree that a view would be beneficial.
Sure.
that was pretty much what I just said,
Of
yeah.
course, we are keeping the height below 30 feet, so 29.6.
It's
And
29.8.
29.8. And yeah, the rest is, I mean, you know, we can move the basement walkout, we can figure it out, put it in the back, if that will get us approved, but we probably still want to build it right.
and one more comment on that is that the street level is about 5 feet lower than the grade of the house because it's graded, so that the house is hardly visible. I mean, the house itself is part of, the house is visible, but that part where the walk into the basement, walk down to the basement is gonna be.
We are looking at.
That's the driveway though. I would agree with you, cause we commented on that. Going in front of the house, there's like a big, like sort of a thing, but this is where it's wide open. I think you should put it on the west side of the house. It looks like behind the fence where the pool equipment is plenty of space.
Yeah, except there's an existing basement there or crawl space which we are not going to change. We are only adding to that right side.
Alright,
this side is the crawl space?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
what about this
We
side
cannot-
then?
Yeah, it's
There's
not
no
going in
other
front.
setback. There's a setback there.
There's a setback on the side?
Johnny, do you have something to say?
Okay?
Do you have something to say?
Yes, the deck is 40 feet long and it comes out under, it's within the 30%. It's fine.
Thank you. I would like to view it.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to hold for a view.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We'll take a view. And let's see what our last one is.
It's their pool.
Their pool.
You want to rethink the pool, because you have to put the walk down to the basement? No?
No, because there is
It
that
doesn't
anyways.
interfere
Doesn't
with-
really, yeah, doesn't really change anything.
I think the pool can't be seen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't,
No seat.
But that shows you right there, it's wide open, the driveway.
The one where
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just cause Abby and I went there, nobody else did.
I hope you will too, because life is a little bit easier.
yeah, I'm okay with
Yeah,
Is it John? Who's on this?
everybody.
Everybody, except Steve, Jesse, did you?
Jesse
I
did,
think it's you.
well,
He
we
just
typically
went.
pair, so it'd be
Yeah.
TJ.
Well, he just went.
Same as.
I know, but it's
Same
the
house,
same,
same
same
address.
thing.
And the only thing I see is totally fine, but the fence is a bit high and maybe too tall. So maybe we drop it down to a 5-foot board instead of a 5-foot 5-and-1.
It's a,
6-foot
actually,
5-and-1.
But it's,
it's a 4 and 2, or a 4.5 and 1.5, which is
4.5
odd.
and 1.5, that's quite
That's
odd,
odd.
yeah.
Yeah.
We should do a straight board
Should be
fence, like
5
4.5 or 5.
I think they
Does
meant
it
to
go
do
around the whole
5-and-1.
property or just
No, they did that good.
On the side
Here
of the house.
what's in the front?
and
but
here,
again, TJ,
the
What's
yard.
that?
again, you're looking from like 5 feet lower, so you're looking up, you only see almost the top of the fence.
But we
Yeah.
have
This is
standard
like way,
fences
way in the
that,
back.
that we use in certain
It's
regions.
gonna,
5
it's
over
gonna
1, yeah.
look a lot more, it's gonna be softer without the lattice, and it's gonna draw less attention to the eye. You know,
I agree with that.
Yeah, less confusing.
And you don't have it going all the way around, right? It's not in the
No,
front,
only in the front.
only in
Only
the
on
front.
left side and right side of the
It has
house.
brush.
All the way around these
Yeah.
hedges and the wire fence in the hedges.
You have wire fence in the hedges?
Yeah, wire, so, yeah,
Pool
it
fence.
needs to be full
Oh,
fence,
for
yeah.
the pool fence. Okay, so
But we can change it to 4.
Abby,
I agree with TJ on, I like, instead of doing a 5-and-1 with a lattice on the top, I think a simple fence is better. And, I'm okay with the pool.
okay, TJ.
Yeah, looks good. I'd make a motion to approve through staff with, the fencing type change to 5-foot, after rather, cedar board fence.
Okay. Val,
I'm good with that.
good. Johnny, are you good with the pool?
Yes, my only question is, why, oh, wait a minute. No comment, thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion?
TJ made one.
Approve
Okay.
through staff 5-foot, and after rather fence.
Very good. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
There's actually is, no visibility whatsoever.
Yeah, there is.
I think there's a
We
little
went
bit,
there today.
from the street side, here up to the building corner there, yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the back of the house, you look at the pool, you can see it.
You, Abby.
What? Oh,
Thank you.
So much.
Karen from Totuit has left the building. She's the next two, I believe.
I think I know, motion to hold, what is it, what's her address?
14 Osprey.
Quick, hurry up.
Let's vote on it.
Repeat the motion.
She left a while ago.
It's
Are they
just a
not
5-foot
going
fence rather than a
The last one?
5-and-1.
For the
Yeah,
swimming pool.
Karen has left the building. it
Yeah, we
seems.
voted, okay on the swimming pool and we're, yes.
Right, what are we
Right.
doing now? Oh, we're going to Voyages.
Now we're going
Motion to
it.
hold number 1 and 2 on
Hold.
old business for representation.
Holding for reps.
I don't believe we're on the concept design.
Aye.
Oh no, CW.
I was on those, aye. One of them anyways.
Very random eyes.
Yes,
No
aye.
chip,
Yeah. You ready? Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Chip.
It's been an exciting night.
I'm looking forward to the wonderful changes you've made to reflect the minutes.
Well, it's exactly what I did.
huh,
This is gonna be easy compared to, good evening.
Anything.
Yeah. So this is the application for additions and revisions of 34 Prospect. At the last meeting, there were
Happy New Year, you
Oh,
Happy
no,
New Year. Can you hear me
yes.
okay? There were 2 requested changes, both of which are reflected in the drawings. The first one was on the dormers, on the addition to move the windows together, and to make and pull the corner boards in so that the windows filled the dormer and made the overall size of the dormer smaller. That was one, and the other was to change the windows on the ends of that addition to one light taller, so that they were more consistent with what was there and what below them. So those two changes are reflected.
What about the windows?
What?
Yeah.
Here's the minutes.
The diamond window?
Yeah. So I'll go first if you don't mind, Madam Chair, just to kind of move it along. Chip, I appreciate the changes with respect to the dormers on the first to the last page. Yeah. On the southeast elevation, I still think they I think there's a improvement with respect to the massing of the dormers individually, but I think that they're just overwhelming that structure.
What do we have over 12 there?
It's just the size of the dormers. They're better than they were, but they're still it's too much, I think. I think that really what needs to happen is the corner boards need to come in to be where the window casings are.
Or alternatively, what if we just removed the vertical light from them and instead of 8/12, they were 6/9? I mean, we're happy to do whatever is your preference.
It's more than for me. It's more the mass of the dormers. I mean, they're occupying a large portion of the roof plane, which dormers normally do. However, there's 3 of them in combination with the fenestration that's required to fill up the width of the dormer and the height of the dormer, layered on top of the fenestration on the second floor, the first floor, and the lower level. This elevation just looks a little overpowering with those dormers. So that's my comment on the southeast elevation. On I'm going to go backwards. The northwest elevation, I have no concern other than the window change from the diamonds being changed out. On the northeast elevation, I'll have to look. Those double layered dormers, I just think are so atypical. If they're not visible, they're not visible. If they are, it's probably oblique. I think that perhaps shed might work. I know I didn't mention this before, but I was just so focused on the diamond windows. On the northeast elevation, again, I think this will be visible from your southwest elevation, is the dormer height, the ridge height, really is this speaks to the mass of the dormers, is very high.
I'm sorry, northeast?
And your southwest and your northeast, your dormer ridge height shows is, this helps to show how the dormers are so, I mean, you're looking at a dormer, right? If you look at the southwest elevation or the northeast, the dormer is almost a third of the full second story structure from the side view. It's just very large. The other comment I like to make, and I didn't make it before, but it's becoming more apparent to me, is that this connector piece, it looks more like a connector than it looks like an additive story. You have the front of the house, you had the front entry, then you had an entryway, and then another structure was added. So you've got this, it just reads to me
More modern than.
than what
additive massing.
and what the structure would bear, the story of the structure over time in its historical context. This is a much more modern element as a connector piece, as opposed to having utility. And then again, the diamond windows being changed out, I just can't approve. And I've been very consistent on that. maybe not as direct, but I have said that those are an important feature of this iconic home. So I want to just be clear.
Val, are you on this?
I wasn't, even though you and I viewed today. I thought this was a new application.
I'm on it, I have no concerns, it looks good, I'm glad you made the revisions we addressed them.
I'm on it. You know, my point all along is, you know, with the addition, which, is an additional massing that is separate from the historical part of the building, I wasn't as concerned about, but the historical part of the building in the windows, I have been. I think it is it's the signature of this historical structure, and concerned, you know, that we're taking that signature away. So you know, the addition I've never really had too much of a concern with, but the windows, I'd like to see something at least being thrown back to that style.
Abby,
You wanna say
can
something?
I, yeah,
Yeah.
because we
Please.
went and viewed together. I think if you haven't viewed from down below on Mill Street and coming up around Angola, you may have a different opinion about this addition being okay. It's a wide open space with this sitting on a hill, and whether that's a private way or a public way, you're gonna see that addition full on, and the dormers are way too big. Just my opinion.
This is, what angle are you looking at it from Mill?
Angola.
I'm looking at what Stephen was just talking about.
No, I know
Oh,
the
the back of the
elevation,
house.
but from what view are you seeing that elevation?
Oh, it's the one which is the rear with all these
No,
doors.
but where were you viewing that? Where were you
Topographically, where
were you looking at?
We went down on Mill Street and pulled into Angola, and we were parked on Angola looking up, because it's under construction right now, that's all wide open.
Oh, okay. So you can see the back of it from there.
You
Yeah.
see the northeast and something west,
It's overwhelming, this house.
southwest.
Can I say something? If I can?
Please.
As you go along Prospect Street and look at the Arc and the rest of the stuff, you look right at her house. You don't see the first floor, but you see the diamond windows in the second floor. It catches your eye. It's one of those landmarks that you see as you drive along. And it's one house down from the old mill. It's not, it's in sort of a older spot. I think that retaining the windows is important. And perhaps we should look again at the back going Angola from the pony field.
Yeah, I think we've doing it a couple of times. Well, it's interesting that it seems like the board really likes those diamond windows.
Well, can I say something? Go ahead. All right, so, Stephen, yes, absolutely, you have been consistent with the diamond windows. Quite honestly, I feel like I think I've been here, I don't know, maybe six times or something like this. I do feel that we've made every change requested by the board except for the diamond windows. I had a long call with my client today, and I convinced them that the board is going to really hold fast to those. That was very important to them to change those to a double hung window, but I think I've got them on board that the diamond windows are a very important feature to the board. So I was expecting that could come up, and I prepared my client for that. I do feel that we've made, we've really made all the other changes to the rest and all sorts of things. I would be happy to make those dormers smaller, but I would, and to keep the diamond windows even. but it seems like there might be some, I don't know. So I'd like to offer that as to keep the diamond windows where they are on the main house, you know, as they exist. And happy to make those dormers skinnier by light skinnier from each side, which would, and then remove and pull it in the corresponding amount.
Is that
Which-
on the northeast?
That was the
northeast
three dormers
elevation or the
on the
south?
southeast.
Which will lower your ridge height.
Which will lower the ridge height as well.
And that tracks with my previous comments. I just
Yeah.
felt that they're overpowering, so I haven't changed on that either. I think that those are appropriate changes, subject to a final review, personally. I am a little bit concerned about the dormers from the rear.
Can you use an elevation, like what elevation?
I'm sorry, your
Southeast?
northeast elevation. But, and Chip, just if you're looking at this, so right, we have the existing structure. And you can see where, although, as you would probably readily admit, a dormer on top of a dormer in terms of the height on a structure is atypical.
Right.
But this is, I'm not gonna necessarily say quirky, but there's like a story behind it. There's something happened where they built out an addition on the northeast elevation of the existing structure for that upper dormer. This, however, does not read like that at all. This doesn't read in the context of the history of the structure. It looks like someone came along, and I'm not saying as a designer type of a thing. I'm just saying in terms of how I'm reading it, that it was like, okay, well, we can, you know, symmetrically lay out the dormers on the first floor, and then symmetrically lay out the dormers, well, on the second floor and on the third floor. And it just reads to me strangely. It's almost as if there were two dormers on the third floor. It might be more appropriate, although still atypical, than having the three across. But that's my concern. I'm not.
No, I agree.
I just want to be clear, that's all.
I personally feel that the northeast elevation, those three dormers in a row look more like a, what's that game? Like a Tetris game, rather than, like I agree with Stephen that the previous tells a story, the two together. These 8/8s are swimming in their dog houses. And they don't really relate to the dormer. They're like too big. But I think I'm on the northeast. So, in the existing, those 9/12s fit in that dormer better. They just look too big and too much like the Tetris game.
One more comment, if I may, Madam Chair. Chip, the idea for me is putting the dormers and joining the outside casings with the corner board in terms of the structural, in terms of the visual, is that was more of the period for this house. And if we're going to reflect on the historical structure, these are more modern. These are like, to me, this reads as a more Nantucket typical house design type dormer, which the rear of the structure reads as. But when we're looking at this visibility, which I wasn't aware of, it becomes more of a point of concern. So they've been doing clearing there, or what?
Speaking to that, so what if we, I haven't seen it, don't know what kind of planting could maybe help the view from that angle.
Well, it's a big hill,
So,
and is there gonna be more lots? It looks like there's sticks all over the place.
Yeah, so this is, it's a very large piece of property.
Right.
That the family has, created additional lots.
I think it's gonna end up being like
No, it's
Yeah.
not.
Also?
It's so just for,
So-
I mean, I know this isn't part of this application.
No, but we
I'm-
saw the sticks when we were there today.
Right, so I just want to let you know, again, this is not part of this application,
Sure.
but so you have greater context. It's an extremely large piece of property that could have been divided into 22 lots. I've been working with the family for a couple of years now, and they didn't want to do that. So we've surveyed the tree, surveyed the topo, and they're doing something like 6 or 7 lots instead of 20 because they want to be sensitive to all of that. It's been a family property for a very long time. It was really important to them for that. So that is what is happening on the rest of the property. And you'll see that the trees and so forth, all the significant trees are staying and all of that. But, part of the greater vision. So go ahead.
I just along those lines, I don't want to interrupt if you're not finished.
No, that's fine.
But I will if you are kind of finished.
Yeah.
The idea for me is that I appreciate the context. I think that's important, especially when we have these new potential, we have lot subdivisions and we have potential new structures, and those are important things for us to consider. I guess with respect to your program on the interior on the 3rd floor, I would just ask you to take one more look at the dormers and how they relate to the new dormer below, and see if you can come up with something that better reflects an historic approach to dormers.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better.
I don't know that the dormers are necessarily a no, based on the fact that there will be some limitations on the visibility. I don't think you're gonna see all of these at once. I don't know, I wanna go look. But I think there's a chance here to make this work really well and honor and reflect the historic structure. And I think that's incumbent upon you to address.
So on that note, we have right on that same sheet, you can see what's there existing. So the only dormer, so part of it on the inside too, they're trying to do minimal changes on the inside. The front stair on this is one of those ones that's, the treads are 4 inches and it's vertical and like that. So in order to safely get to the 2nd floor without ripping out that front stair, they want to add a rear stair. So the only, from a programmatic standpoint, to get that to functionally work, we need this dormer over here. We don't need this one. We could probably eliminate.
Why can't this?
And we could match the existing style.
I prefer that.
So what I would like to offer that we can do, and I'll reflect this in this next round, is to keep these
Retain
exactly
those
as
two.
they are, add one that looks exactly like it where we need it, and then that would be it.
Yeah,
And then that would actually reflect the need and the historical adaptation, and why that.
So you're gonna flip-flop them.
No.
No, he's going to add.
This is what's existing. All I want to do is to keep them exactly like they look, and put one over here.
Basically
because we
doing
need it.
Oh, I got you. So you take that one out.
Yeah. Take that one out.
Take one out, and then, so is that?
And match the existing, right now, the faces of the, now, on that note, we could do that for these over here. They're smaller, they are tying into the existing, the ones on the,
Northeast,
southeast elevation
Southeast.
could match the ones that are here.
Yeah. It's a aha moment.
Yeah.
Well, wait, when you say match, I don't know what the relative size is.
No, these are way smaller. They're smaller, and when I'm proposing,
They don't look smaller.
well, okay, I say that, let me just make sure I'm
trees.
saying that. They are, interesting. They're like 3 inches smaller, so they're not a lot smaller. But
The windows are smaller.
the windows are smaller.
Well, what about?
And matching those windows and then pulling them tighter or something.
Suppose G.
It may help, this is just an aside from somebody who was there today, to show us the subdivision and so that we see there'll be other structures in front of it, because right now, it's like, wide open.
Well, do you wanna try the revisions that?
Let me, what I would like to do is make the revisions we discussed tonight, officially change this diamond windows back.
What you guys just worked out's great, and I think that would, along with the windows.
The diamond windows.
You've got my vote.
Yeah, we're so close.
So you're gonna, on the southeast elevation, you're gonna thin them up, which will drop your ridge.
Yeah.
On the northeast elevation, you're going to eliminate the upper right dormer.
And I'm gonna change the new ones to match the existing.
Yeah, so you got two.
So they're gonna
gangs.
look, I mean, yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. And keep the diamond windows.
Yeah.
Then they will match.
I think that would do it. I understand Val's comment about the site plan. I'd like to think that you're gonna be really sensitive in developing this, and I believe that, you know?
I mean, you're removing a dormer, and it's almost
Yeah.
going back to the original
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
feel of the building.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do I hear a motion?
Oh, can I clarify, we were talking about both the structure, we had two applications in front of us. I think it's important to reflect, right? We had the addition and replace windows on the house, and then we had the garage, but we were talking about them as though they were one application.
No, they're
No, the
two
garage is
applications and we've always had them to
Oh, the
track.
garage
We
is a
haven't even looked
separate
at it yet 'cause
structure?
you're gonna track it.
Okay,
Looks
Big.
like a garage.
It's a separate structure.
okay, thank you for clarifying, because I was obviously
Whose
confused.
motion was that? Just Steve, that was your motion?
We'll
To
hold for revisions, yeah.
All in
Okay.
favor?
And then are we still tracking the garage, and you're gonna give us that with, or we're gonna look at that now?
I'm happy to have it tracked if you want, or look at it now.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, you're the
Let's track it.
designer, so you know.
Let's track it because.
Let's track it. You guys
we've got
had a hard
dog
night.
here.
You guys had an hour and a half opening
I knew it was
application.
fine.
Okay. I just don't want something to bite you if, you know, you come in and you're trying to close this
No,
out.
no.
Okay. So motion to track the garage with the
Aye.
house.
I second that motion.
How come I'm not on these?
You're on this last one?
Yeah, jeez.
I'm
How did
talking
you-
about
So
this one.
3 is
All
hold
that.
for revisions,
I made it.
4 is to track
I like your
3.
sweater.
Four is the whole,
Thank
And
you.
you only got one left,
Red,
and
red on
it's
red.
gonna be easy, cause it's
Okay,
Matt.
that says Mr.
He's gonna
Rogers'
do a
sweater.
360 slam dunk.
Track.
Sounded hard.
Track.
That's yours, I think, right?
when you can
No.
approve.
No, that is revisions.
Thanks, everyone.
This is
Thank you,
revisions.
thanks, Jeff. Have a good night.
This is revisions. This is track.
I'm telling her, last one.
Oh, this is gonna be so fast, Val.
It's gonna be
Now,
sit down or no?
it's gonna be licking the sweat.
Yes, it is. You
Yeah, I'm
can't
not-
see
I'm not
this
opening it.
Look at it, it's just a little thing on the back of the
from
house.
anywhere. Abby and I went
Oh, yeah.
four-wheeling.
I know
I
this one.
walked into the woods and got lost.
with Tootie. She was sleeping in the bed. You can't even see the tall part of the house.
No, you can't.
It's
You really
John, Val, and Abby.
So I'm good with it.
They're moving quick on this one.
Why?
Cause we
Because
went
can't
over.
see
Can't
it.
see
We
it.
got
We
here
got-
at 5:30, we're not.
Yeah, well, that's
We got
not my
lost. I
fault.
thought we were gonna be
Your
out of
mouth
here
off
by
again.
6.
Close.
Cannot be seen
John, we went out there. You can't see it from the street.
anywhere.
You trying to bias my decision?
Yeah, I want $40.
Yeah, not only is she gonna bias your decision, she's gonna extract money from you. Oh,
It's for pool, isn't it?
It's
So
additions.
you get the pool on
It's a
here.
greenhouse.
I didn't see you in there previewing these like I did.
Come on.
Yeah, it's behind me. Stay
Who's-
with the leash. It's a little Peligroso.
Oh, what is it?
Dangerous. Sometimes they can get wrapped around.
Well, unless somebody leaves themselves through that door and scares her.
Yeah.
She's pretty quiet.
Tootie.
What
Motion
else?
to approve as
Oh,
submitted.
thank you. Yeah,
not be
all in
south or
favor?
west.
Aye.
It should be on the previous drawings.
Actually, I'm not on it.
On the drawings, it should show it.
Okay.
Val?
On the drawings,
Val.
it should put the cardinal points.
I'm
not on the
in.
perspectives.
Yes, I.
Here, John, it's on the north.
Okay. Motion to approve. Lack of
We already
visibility.
did.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Well, happy New Year to you too.
Can I have a pen? I guess I shouldn't sign it in pencil.
Happy New Year has already been done.
Happy New
I
Year.
know, but I haven't seen you since it's been a New Year.
Madam
Due
Chairperson,
to
I see you guys more than I see my family.
Valerie, Everybody's gone.
Visibility.
What?
Oh, both of them.
Steve,
What?
were you at the meeting the
I want to
17th?
make a comment.
Yes,
I have
I want to make a comment.
the 17th.
Okay.
Yeah, last application. I couldn't
Yeah,
speak
and
on it.
you,
Now I can.
should I make a motion
Abby did it, I wasn't
to
sure.
amend something previously approved for the December 10th or hold
No,
off?
because what I put in, one of the things about that letter that I wanna double check before we do that is make sure no appeals have been filed against that set of minutes. Cause that could make a real mess. I don't think so.
Okay, but I mean,
And
Yeah.
then, the motion to amend must also include all your changes. And so that's,
right,
and
but,
it needs
but,
to be in the agenda that way.
right, but, I
So
mean,
we
let's
can't
be
do it
clear, it
tonight.
doesn't need to be everything listed out. It
Yeah.
can be a summary of,
No, you need to list it.
Terry,
It's like,
no,
no, I
you-
just read it
you
today.
need,
You
but
have
you, the
paragraph
quote you
for
sent me is
replacing
from
paragraph.
Bartleby's Robert's Rules of Order 1915. You've gotta get the
No,
11th
it's the
edition.
4th edition.
The 11th
Online
is
now.
the 11th is the only authorized edition.
This is the edition that's online news, all the latest
The
updates.
11th
I'm sorry, Steve, it's the one I'm
The
gonna go by.
11th is the only authorized edition.
This is the most update edition.
You just said the 4th.
14? Or 14?
And
It'd be
the-
the 14th. It's the one that's online.
The text you sent me, you can't get it online, you have to buy it. That's why I know it's not the right one. You can't, you have to buy it. That's how they make their money. You have to buy it. So, in any event, the text you sent me was from is it the same text in the 1950 Robert's Rules of Order?
Abby?
That's the text you sent me, is in the 1915 version also.
Everybody took off, I was gonna make a comment.
When you make that,
John, we're in the middle of a discussion about
I
that.
said before you said it.
Whether or not, it's motion to amend, it would be motion to amend
Look,
something
I'll keep
previously.
going.
Terry,
And then you cite what it is.
Terry,
You're a good
we
man.
have to stop. I have
Hard work,
immense
too.
respect for you and for what you
Very
do.
busy.
However,
Make
you
me
are
busy.
not our
I
consulting
see
parliamentarian.
the kids on the
And nor are you paid to be our
Computer,
consulting
you know, I
parliamentarian.
go search
Neither are
around.
you.
You are
I
also
think
not
it's
a
family,
member of the
yeah.
HDC, the deliberative
That's
body.
enough, though.
So you really
It's
shouldn't
enough,
be
no
making
more.
decisions on how we do things. I'm just saying.
Then I'm gonna take it up a step.
You
I'm
can
not
do
gonna
whatever you want.
Do it just because that's what you say, but we
You
can't.
can do whatever you
It has
want.
to be on the
I'm just
agenda.
suggesting that it has to be noticed, just as we notice everything else. We don't notice, for example, a house that the rooftops, where we put pool and hardscape. We don't list everything that's being changed. We say pool and hardscape. So for instance, if we follow the same practical process we've done in the past, we would say, notice would be to amend the minutes of December 10th. That's it. That follows our past protocols for the last, since the HGC's been in place, issuing minutes like these that I've looked at. We don't need to be issuing every single change in a minute, just like we don't need to be listing every single aspect of an application, because if we did, it would be impractical. It follows the same rational
I
logic.
hate to say it, but you're supposed to.
Well,
List the changes.
But Terry,
that's not
you
in your
can't
note.
pick
Let's
and
not go there.
choose
We can't do
what
it
we're
tonight.
supposed to. You
When it comes
can't
down
pick
to
and
we
choose
can't
what we're
do it
supposed to
tonight.
do. That's all.
That we can't do it tonight. So what's,
All I asked is whether you wanted me to make that motion or not.
No, not
I didn't
tonight.
want to get into a big discussion about it.
not tonight.
I would suggest that you get
you sign this?
the authorized version before you take this up a level, because
This
I
one
will
here,
be using the authorized version, and I will pursue it, not as a matter of personal conflict, but as a matter of
Okay, yeah.
principle, and in reading what is the appropriate guidance.
Right in the middle.
Good job, Sid. Thank you.
I'm pulling.
What one is that?
Oh, John had something to say.
Johnny,
I
did you
said
have
it
something
right.
you wanted to say?
Yes.
He did, man. Wait, well, there's only 2 signatures. on
Diane,
this.
John has something to say.
Where did Abby leave without signing this?
What'd you say?
I just want to add
She's
for
the
the
chair,
minutes, all right? Because I didn't
so
sit on that
sad.
last application. That if you get a chance, so that everybody will get, some of them walked out, so they won't know it. But in the minutes, would you mention that, I mentioned that, go up and look at North Mill Street, where you come down from the windmill, going north, and there's that dirt road goes down to,
Johnny,
That's what I said.
Johnny,
Yeah.
Val brought
I
that.
brought that
Mueller's
up.
property, Mueller's, yeah.
Val said the same thing.
I'm sorry?
That's why
Val
they're
said the
having
same
I
to
am
do.
saying, well, at least it's in the minutes, and the others will see it, they walk out.
Yeah.
Go look
I'll
at from both, go look at it from both ends, because there's one heck of a
I think
mess.
it was 7 more houses.
Oh, there's 2 posts up there with a chain on them.
Yeah, so you can't go down, you can
Yeah.
only.
Do you know whose house that was?
Hey,
A woman by the name of
oh,
Marjorie.
take that home, thank you.
She was
Motion to adjourn.
top
Motion to
reporter of
adjourn?
the Boston Herald for years.
Motion to adjourn at 6:44.
Bet you there's some stuff inside those walls.
Yeah. She was a social editor. And she loved that house.
Good to have